providence. I told you before how both St. Benedict and our own Blessed Julian of Norwich saw the whole of creation in the palm of the Father's hand. It's all there. She described it as round as a ball, and she was surprised it did not fall into nothing, for it seemed full naught. But it didn't, because God made it, God loved it, God kept it. And the whole thrust of the Sermon on the Mount is there is a power that cares. And we behave as though he didn't care. Analyze your brain. Analyze the amount of energy that goes into solving all the problems of the world, as though you were God. Have you thought of the freedom you might get if you abdicated over your reign and received life? There was a time when you were not, and you were given a spark of life. So all you have, including this one breath right now, is all free gift. Now, this is kind of important for Christians. St. Paul, writing to the Romans, is talking about what happens at baptism and how we are called not to be living as we were and as they are out there. Slaves. Slaves. One can be slaves to many things, even to oneself. Years ago, I was given a copy of Christian. It's the Welsh Christian magazine which goes around. And on it was this very powerful cover picture. And it was this. There was a big, big syringe. And clinging to it, for all his might and all he was worth, was a tiny, tiny man. I've seen that. People who can't see further than the next fix. Life is sacrificed. The dole is already given in anticipation because of the fix that must happen in the meantime. That's obvious slavery, and it can end also in early death. But there are more subtle ones, both physical and psychological. The physical one, which is also psychological, but it's sort of physical, it's tobacco. Now, I'm surprised actually, talking to various souls over the years, how difficult it is to get out of that bondage. It's pretty hard, apparently. One would think that an act of will would be enough, but it's not. One needs a lot of divine grace and collaboration. And yet what freedom would come from a smoke-free zone, inside and outside. Another, very simple one, might be tea or coffee. Another, now we're going into the psychological here, is internet. And it's a real addiction in our time. Another is the likes of having to be up to date with all that's coming up on one's communication system. That could just be a mobile phone of a classic sort, but now it can be multiplied many times over in such a way that one is not free to rest in space and time as it's given. Because I'm blocking out my life. A few years ago, I was talking to some lovely travelling people, young travelling people, noticed that little bit there. I was celebrating Holy Mass for them, I think somewhere in Dublin, in one of their houses. And some of them were quite amazing for the intuitions they had already at that early life, because they had to cop on pretty early when they married so young. And this was being said amongst themselves. It was the beginning of Lent, And one of them there was saying that her cousin had given up, I think it was something like WhatsApp. But she'd not gone back to it ever after. And the reason given was this: I got my family back. Does that sound a bit familiar? It's almost amusing to see people going through the street in this mode. Bump. As though this were the centre of the whole universe. And it is. But there is a wider picture. Here, the Lord has compassion. That in Hebrew is very strong. It talks about the entrails of the soul. And he, of course, puts the disciples to the test, and they have the clue. And so, now what does he do? He anticipates some of what we're about to do at the altar. There's a giving thanks here and looking up to heaven. Now, giving thanks, it's Eucharistein, to give thanks. The word Eucharist is there. But when the Hebrews gave thanks, they did it in this form: Blessed are you, Creator of the universe, holding up whatever they have. And by that, what they're holding is blessed and set apart. That's what we've actually recuperated in the present Mass. It's simple, but it's ancient in form, in tone, I mean. And so he's doing this, dropping a hint. Because this same power, which remember now is creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing of matter, was about to happen. And he's already giving us to understand what is going to happen in the church that he will found. And this miracle, this particular one, has always happened in Christian history. I know quite a few cases of it, and it does happen. But there are others too. The providence of God does care for us also on the spiritual. If we are taking our faith seriously, if we're taking our vocation seriously, there is somebody whom you know well who's not amused and will get very agitated. And looking back, I'm almost chuffed that old Nick was so annoyed that I should ever be a priest, and he was making it very, very difficult for years and years and years for that to happen, for excellent reasons. One day, having just been transferred to Italy, to a new foundation there, the prior took me to San Giovanni Rotondo. This is 1996. And he said on the way, in the bus, don't want to upset you or anything, there is a little problem. And he talked about what had just come from Wales or somewhere. And so I went for about an hour to Padre Pio at his tomb, which was in the crypt, and more or less said, look, I can do no more, it's over to you. And very quickly after that, this combination of the divine and the human came into a powerful plane, and things moved, which could have been very, very difficult to move. I'm reminded of that because, in consequence, they got this made, which I haven't put on today by chance, and it was what you can't see very well, but it's actually made for somebody coming from Ireland or Wales. And it was, when I was given for ordination, the Celtic cross there. And it all came back when I put it on. But I remember when, at last, when it happened on the feast of the conversion of St. Paul, 1997, that's 25th of January, I was a deacon at that point, on the ground, on the altar steps before the bishop, the Archbishop of Siena. He just made me a deacon at that point. And I remember looking into his big blue eyes, and I just said, with a tear in my eyes, because he could have stopped it, and he whispered, pray for me. He was a good pastoral bishop who had a bit of cop on. And actually what he said was this, which was very wise, when he got all this strange correspondence. When a house, what was going on in Ireland, when a house was in crisis, it loses the plot. So he copped on. But old Nick doesn't like people who are a nuisance to him. And anyone here who's thinking about that, thinking about the priesthood or whatever it might be aware of that. You have to be very careful where you go. I just want to finish with something closer to what could be also your experience, great and small. There's a whole invisible world of care. We are not alone on this journey through life. We have an angel and indeed a whole angelic sphere around us. Many by now are the testimonies I've had of angelic intervention. It probably actually has happened to you as well. If you've been involved, either as a child actually or as an adult, in what could be a nasty accident, it doesn't emerge to be really as bad as it should have been, suddenly because of something being stopped. In other words, the angels that normally are invisible and just spiritual can, like the demon actually was an angel, fallen, can have a push on the material. They can do it. And sometimes also they can do more. I'll just quote this little story which shows how much more they can do, which is interesting, but it reminds us that we are well cared for. So I speak up to me, then I shall begin. This gentleman is in the heart of the summer heat in August. It's taking place somewhere in Poland. I decided to go for one more dip, though the sea was quite cold and the waves were high. But it was the last day of our holiday, so I felt a great need for a swim in the sea. At that time, I did not even swim much. Now, by the way, any parents here, teach your children to swim. It's a useful skill. I only approached the first wave. I jumped in and allowed it to carry me to the shore. I thought, that's my last jump. It's getting cold. I jumped onto the wave. It turned out that the ocean current had changed in the meantime, and instead of taking me towards the shore, it carried me further into the ocean. Seeing this, I did not even panic. I tried to break through, but it was already too cold and I was tired. I thought, what should I do? If I start waving towards the beach, they'll think that's all I'm doing. Simply waving. And if I shout, they won't hear me. I then just lay down on the water to rest and try again in a moment. That was a mistake, as the sea then carried me even further. I could no longer clearly make out the people on the beach. He's getting further and further away. I was then pulled down several times under the water. My arms were sore. There's no point struggling, as the beach has no lifeguards anyway. What could I do? He started to think about death in the water. He was 31 and had just started work as a catechist. I wonder what life is like on the other side, he thought. In 2 or 3 minutes, I will find out. Floating on my back, he made an examination of conscience. That's interesting. Lying peacefully on the water, I thought, if it pulls me under once again, I'll struggle no more. After all, no one on the shore knows I am drowning. And one thought penetrated my consciousness. Lord God, if you need me, then you will save me. This gave me a new kind of strength to try once more to get over this wave. I turned round to swim normally. I looked up and saw a young man drawing close to me. I thought to myself, here's another person who wants to swim in the cold sea. He swam up to me and said, can I help you? Astonished, I answered, I'll manage. I remembered that he gave a slight smile and answered, I'll help you. I took hold of him, and by our united efforts we swam towards the shore, which took a surprisingly short time. We got to shore where a rescue tent was being prepared. Some lifeguards, secured by a rope, entered the water, and the crowd was looking on. Seeing this, I thought, how embarrassing. I stepped onto the beach, and head bowed in shame, I vomited the water which I had earlier managed to swallow. Now, he came to and got up to thank his rescuer, but couldn't see him anywhere. My wife told me that she had earlier wanted to thank him and just took a quick look to see if I was all right, but also couldn't find him. This was odd, as she had seen him calmly undressed before entering the water, although his clothes were no longer where they had been left. But she did not see him dry himself or dress. How could he have done so in a moment? So he goes on to explain how there's no explanation other than that was actually an angel coming in human form. They checked it out, and he explains how it couldn't be anything else. And that does happen. I conclude, if that's the case, if we are actually all the time right next to an angelic presence, what should be our mode of being as we go through life? Think how it hurts that angel to hear a swear word, an aggressive word, a noisy word in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, whatever it might be. Think we're being watched, but for our own good. And also, this angel is just waiting for something to do. And the more we give him to do, the more he'll come involved. We leave them on the shelf. One day, at the moment of death, we'll see him. Just think, I didn't realize you were there. A real person, so close to me and watching me all the time.